very, very fine keynote speech this morning. Dr. Schneider's outstanding, and her message, I think, is appropriate and very timely for us. Let me introduce myself to those of you in the room who I have not had the chance to meet. I'm Frank Brogan, and I can still say the new Chancellor of the PASSHE system. I'm very proud to be assembled with me here today. We have most of our 14 university presidents. I know at least one had to return to campus for an issue, but I do appreciate all of them being here today. And we also have members of the Board of Governors. To my right, we have Guido Pagini, who is the chair of the Board of Governors for the PASSHE system. And we have Ron Henry, vice chair, who is with us to my left. And not here, because she is appropriately in class, is a third member of our Board of Governors, Sarah Dixon, who is one of our student representatives to the Board of Governors and a student, obviously, here at Clarion University. I also would be remiss if I did not thank all of our friends at Clarion for hosting all of these meetings, but also making accommodation for what we're doing here this morning. President Whitney and her administration, the great faculty and staff at Clarion, and of course I've had a chance to meet a good number of Clarion students and board members. They can be very proud of what's happening here at Clarion. It is one of the jewels in the crown of the PASSHE system, and we're all, I know, delighted to be an adopted part of the family for the last couple of days, so we appreciate that very much. We also have a good many trustees. I was just saying nice things about you in your absence.
Oh,
but
thank
now
you,
that you're
Chancellor.
here, we can move on.
I apologize.
Running a conference, he says do it once.
We understand. I was just saying, by the way, that Dr. Schneider's outstanding.
Yes,
Really
yes,
outstanding.
a true national voice for your
She
students.
was a good voice. We also have lots of other folks who've been attending the meeting here. The meeting is not for me, even though this may look like it. The meeting is one of our regularly scheduled meetings of our trustees from around the state university system, presidents, an opportunity for people to get together and talk about issues of the day and where people are and hope to move to in the future. So not in the room are a good many other people who are attending the conference, and had a good chance to meet most of them and talk about some of those issues. So just for the next couple of minutes, if you'll indulge me, I wanted to, as the new chancellor, get on the table some of the issues that I believe, and when I say I, in conversations with presidents and board members and other stakeholders, believe goes to a larger we in some shape or form, are going to be important to the PASSHE system moving forward. When I was given the privilege of agreeing to serve as chancellor of this outstanding state university system, the question that I continue to receive regularly is why? Why would you want to leave Florida, the second largest state university system in the country? We here are 115 students. They there are 340,000 students in 12 institutions. Why the change? And you know, regardless of where I'm in my career, I regularly look at two things. One is a challenge, and the other is potential. And as I continued my journey as chancellor of that state system, and actually completing my term as chancellor of that system, this opportunity was brought to my attention, and I began to look at it and got very interested and excited in it. I was already somewhat familiar with the PASSHE system based on the relationship that I had with former Chancellor John Kavanaugh. We were colleagues together as president of two of Florida state universities. He at University of West Florida, me at Florida Atlantic University for a period of years. And I know how much he enjoyed his time here as chancellor and how much potential he believes that this system still has to move to the next level. And that's really where I want to direct the lion's share of my comments, and then we'll open it up to questions not only of me, but to the other folks in the room that you may be inclined to want to talk to. I, by way of rule of engagement, only committed to the presidents that this would not become 14 mini interviews, that we would try to keep this at a high level, recognizing that for me to capture all these people for the press is probably fortuitous, but you'll have other opportunities to speak with all of these folks individually over time, and we hope you do. I believe that a well-informed press corps in any state relative to higher education is a critical communication link to all the constituencies that we serve. And therefore, that press corps means accurate, up-to-date, and high-quality information on a host of important issues that will be facing the PASSHE system going forward. But again, this is my first outing as the new chancellor of the PASSHE system. And Madam President, there'll never be another first. And thank you again for allowing it to be here at Clarion.
Thank you.
We're a system of 14 universities, 15,000 students approximately. Two other factoids that I find incredible about this system is the fact that 90% of our students come from the Commonwealth, and perhaps even more importantly, 80% of our students by survey stay in the Commonwealth upon completion from one of our grade 14 institutions. So there's a clear demonstration of the fact that what these wonderful people do every day is not only educate students for the future, in which measure they're educating students who are going to have a dramatic impact on the quality of life we all enjoy in the Commonwealth for decades to come. There is a direct tie between what we do at our universities and the future of the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania. But as good as it is, there is, I believe, a potential here. There always should be potential. But I think it's more evident to me as I've looked at this system that as good as we are, there is great potential out there to take this system to another level. Now that may sound difficult to get your arms around when we're looking at continued declining state revenues, we're looking at increased tuition rates and fees that we have to place upon students, we're looking at declining enrollments in some of our state universities and increasing costs to operate that ultimately go into the category these days, in some cases, of deficit spending. So we're really looking at some very stressful situations, especially on the economic side. But we are not alone. These same impacts are being felt by institutions and systems all across the country to varying degrees. Everyone has been feeling the major crush of the recession and its net effect on higher education now for some years as we continue to look for the end of this thing, but have to continue to deal with today. Having said that, and this is a good segue to it, one of the issues that I knew we would face as a system and are facing coming in is the issue of retrenchment. It is rather the elephant in the living room here this morning. Not every university is going through it, although I will tell you, every university in this system regularly reviews their academic programs for viability, sustainability, need, both on the Commonwealth side and on the national and the world scene. And just to give you a little evidence of that, over the past 5 years, I asked for some numbers. 158 low enrollment programs have been placed in moratorium in our system over the last 5 years. It's just a part of good stewardship of the academic programs in the PASSHE system. Which programs are sustainable and viable, which programs are necessary to move our system forward in an organized fashion. 40 of those students had no students in them. So somewhere along the line, the desire for students to take those programs or for those programs to be relevant to the world in which our students are going to live as contributing members of society has fallen off. And so those programs were clearly dealt with. Another 90 are being reorganized to assure currency, to make certain that if they are falling on hard times relative to enrollment numbers, relative to viability, sustainability, but still necessary and important for the future, that we address how they are organized, how they are offered, to make sure that they are current and to make sure that they are productive and efficient going forward. But make no mistake about it, retrenchment, by definition, is something there again. It is still good stewardship of academic programming, but it is made necessary because of our continued budget urgency. And retrenchment is not a word that people simply select. It is actually a term laid out in the collective bargaining agreement as to how universities will deal with program shutdown and the people who may be impacted by those program shutdowns. So, by definition, you're looking at a very difficult and emotional issue for faculty, for students, for whole school communities that some of our universities are now engaged in. I want to assure you, after conversing with not only the Board of Governors but the university leadership, that people take this very seriously. This is not something, in some cases, people are engaged in by sheer choice or even just good stewardship. Some of this is just simply made necessary because of a very difficult economy, and then ultimately somewhat a perfect storm. A very difficult economy creating declining state revenue, coupled together with declining enrollment, coupled together with some of the additional costs that are being faced just to operate our universities one year to the next. Put it all together and consider that over the past years, additional reductions and declines in enrollment and impacts on those system and institutional budgets have brought us to a point in time where retrenchment is an absolute necessity in some of our institutions. By virtue of that fact, there are processes that are to be followed that are laid out with some clarity, but at the end of the day, it is still very much an individual set of decisions that these people have to make at their institutions, and that they can only make at their institutions based on the unique nature of what each of our 14 institutions is charged with doing and how they do it. These are decisions that cannot be handed down from on high, because they affect people in classrooms, in laboratories, and on individual campuses, and therefore have to be placed into the hands of the people at the local level, as difficult as they are to deal with. At the same time, over the last 5 years, 56 new programs have been put into place in the PASSHE system. New programs helping to take us forward in allied health, in programs of science and technology, programs of software engineering, and a host of others. So it is not always an issue of dealing with declining academic programs. It must also be, as we're good stewards of academic programming, looking at what makes each of us important and unique, and what academic programs need to be put into place to enhance the institution's profile and marry those with the economic development needs of the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania. And that is an ongoing process. Now, there's much to do. And by the way, there's an urgency to do it, because every day that we delay on many of the things I'm about to talk about is a day lost, perhaps in the fortunes of a student, perhaps in the needs of an institution, perhaps in the strength and viability of the entire Commonwealth. So there is an urgency that exists here, and I feel that urgency as I deal with the board, as I deal with our presidents, to move forward. And so, what I'm going to give you now are a list of issues I think the system needs to deal with. And again, it isn't just I. These are issues that I've heard even before my arrival. These are issues and ideas that I've brought with me from another system, going through many of the same issues facing the PASSHE system today. You're not going to hear a tremendous amount of detail here, because the idea is, by identifying issues with which we must deal, we also have to organize ourselves around those issues, and with great input from leadership, from faculty, from students, from business partners, from community leaders, determine how exactly we will move forward on some of the issues I'm about to discuss. This is not an all-inclusive list. These are just ideas that I think are important to get on the table for future discussion. First of all, you have to start with a plan. Each university is an individual entity, but at the end of the day, they're part of a system. So their individual plan very much needs to jive with the system plan to make sure that we're all in harmony in terms of where that institution and where the system is taking us in the future. We're currently in the development of the strategic plan for the future of the PASSHE system. And over the next several months, hope to bring that in for a landing. So from a systems perspective, people will notice and find important what the system believes is important in turn for all of us to be doing. This doesn't require the stripping of the individuality of 14 fine universities, but it does mean adding to it the alliance with the system to assure that we're all on the same page as to where those institutions are going and how they impact the system in the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania. From that, of course, is the recreation of each individual strategic plan, not only outlining with great clarity and with good timing the roles and responsibilities for goals and objectives and strategic plans, what has to happen at the institution level, but also how what happens there does dovetail appropriately with the needs of the system and the needs of the Commonwealth. And we're going to be looking at that at the same time. By the way, that has the great potential of not only maintaining the individuality of each institution and better teasing it out, but also greater opportunity to clarify with more specificity what does make one university different than the other university, so that everyone is on that page. Saying we're each unique is great. Understanding what makes us unique is even more important. We also need to work together to review and better organize our academic offerings. I alluded to academic programming before on an institution level. That same exercise is important for the whole system to go through. It is, as I mentioned yesterday, a little like a pebble in a pond. An academic change made at Clarion is going to be felt at East Stroudsburg, whether East Stroudsburg knows it or not. And all of those changes are going to impact our system and our Commonwealth. And therefore it's important that we sit together and continue to do that, to review existing academic programs, special programs and projects, and what consideration there will be for new academic programming going forward, and how it impacts not only institutions that are proposing it, but the impact on the other institutions in the system at the same time. And that has to be an ongoing process. Under that heading, I was paying special attention to what our keynote speaker said today on the issue of general education. We are a system that gives great priority to undergraduate education. I come from a system that has universities that are largely dedicated to undergraduate programming, but also some very large and complex universities that put enormous weight on graduate education and research. And that's fine, that system works. But at the end of the day, one of the strengths of the PASSHE system is that we do graduate education, we do research. But the lion's share of the work that we do is and should be focused on the major part of what we are. We're undergraduate entities at the end of the day, to an extreme degree, and that's important. And therefore, we need to continue to collectively review our undergraduate programs. We need to put emphasis on our general education track to make sure that whatever major our students choose at the end of the day is grounded in a strong, unified general education track that is not just an assembly of courses taken to satisfy the gen ed requirements. And I think we can together create a PASSHE gen ed approach that will give us a certain fingerprint identification, that people will know what a PASSHE graduate is taking with them into the workplace by way of not only major degree, but by way of undergraduate and general education offering. A signature program of general education, if you will. Funding. Can't talk about higher education without talking about it. Folks, the idea of FTE / body count funding of higher education worked in both the 19th and 20th centuries. We're not there anymore. The idea of body count is still important in the funding formula, but at the end of the day, we're also now finding that it puts some universities at a gross disadvantage and even rewards people for simply bringing more students into the university. That can be construed to be access, and while access is important, adding more students to add more dollars to our system here in Florida, or any system that is driven almost exclusively by FTE generation, does a disservice to the genius of what these people are responsible for doing at their institution level. We have to have the courage to step out, as some other states are, and we have to begin to look at other ways to fund our higher education system in the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania. We need to look at FTE and how it might be changed for the future and still be relevant. We need to look at how tuition is being utilized. And is it necessary to always look at a blanket tuition policy? As we talked about as presidents yesterday, the possibility that we can look internally at tuition rather than just as a blanket issue. There are many ways, as our keynote speaker mentioned today under the heading of best practice, to look at the funding process for our PASSHE schools going forward. We have to have the courage and the vision to get around the table and be able to do that. That obviously will include the Board of Governors, the boards of the institutions. It will also include the Governor's Office, representation of the General Assembly, since at the end of the day, They are a major funder of what we do in our organized enterprise here. We want to create, and this will sound cliche, but I mean this, PASSHE needs at the end of the day to create the most transparent accountability system in the United States of any state university system. We are all unique, but we begin to put together an accountability system that will be transparent, easily formatted, so that any member of any constituency can have access to important information about each of our institutions and about our entire system. And then that good information, more importantly, can be used to drive policy change for the future. We need to look at costs associated. We need to look at return on investment for those costs. And that's a part of an accountability system at the same time. A lot of that work has already been done with the PASSHE system. We need to take it to the next level. We need to take it there together. Technology, that comes in two forms. Online education, there's something everybody is talking about today. And I think there's some great opportunity here to build on the online education of the PASSHE system that exists today. I also think there's potential. I think there's the potential to look at how we organize our online educational offerings, and I think there's potential in how we organize the back of the house services, as I call them, that support someone's online educational offering. Whether it's a resident student at Clarion or a student who never sets foot on a university campus in the traditional sense, online education is a great potential vehicle to provide easy access and opportunity to those who need it, and even those who cannot, for one reason or another, avail themselves physically of the traditional educational experience. But as we're continuing to build it, we have to look at the support mechanisms of advising and counseling, of financial assistance information. We have to look at all of those services that ultimately, whether you're online or those who now avail themselves of it in person on campus, are a major part of determining whether someone will successfully graduate from a program in person or online. And that's a major part of what we have to look at in the future. Technology also comes in the form of data. The keynote speaker alluded to that today as well. We need to move away in higher ed from the days of doing things because they sounded good or someone wrote a book on the subject. We have to make policy decisions that are grounded in world-class data, research, ideas that are great, but have a strong platform steeped in data itself that will make us more confident that we're moving in the right direction on these issues, which are going to impact the most important constituency we have, our students. And at the end of the day, great work has been done in this system on the better development of data, its assembly, its disaggregation, its utilization. We need to take all of that to the next level at the same time. Shared services. This is not only an educational enterprise, that's our primary function. As you might know, just visit Clarion. This is also a small city. This is a major business enterprise. And everything they do at Clarion is organized around supporting faculty and students in the most important thing that we're engaged in on a daily basis. But how we engage in all of those support services on a university side is up for grabs. In a time of declining enrollments, in a time of declining financial revenue, in a decline of the economic deficiencies, it's important we also have the courage to look at shared services. I'm glad to see PASSHE is already engaged in some shared services, payroll issues, human resource issues, etc. I think there's also potential to begin to look at other possibilities that might exist in the world of shared services, so that perhaps each university doesn't have to spend important resources on duplicating the services that every other university is required to provide. There might be an opportunity to look at some additional shared service opportunities that then would allow universities to spend their dollars on those things that are of critical import to their institution, and allow the system, whether it is the system office or whether it's some of our universities, to take on a more shared services look at how those services can be provided when pooled together. There is an urgency here, not only to take on some of these issues and others that I no doubt haven't mentioned this morning. There's an urgency to involve. None of these things can be done by any one individual or anyone anywhere. It's going to require all of us working together to make sure that we're making the right decisions in these and other areas going forward to assure quality at the end of the day. That's what we have to be about. Every student and their family should be guaranteed that when they're spending $1 on our system, what they're going to come away with is quality in the academic program, the support services that they receive, the opportunity that they're going to need to go out there and change the world and make it a better place, one student at a time. So, whether people are students, faculty, staff, our presidents, our business community, our board members, folks in our system, the one thing I do dedicate to you is that you will get the best I have. And I can pretty much tell you after conversation with all of those folks, you're going to continue to get the best that they have. At the end of the day, should our students expect anything less? I think not. I'm very proud not only to be here at Clarion, but I'm very, very proud that this board has given me the opportunity to help lead this charge. But it is only about leadership, and it's leading a great group of people every single day who will be colleagues to a much greater degree tomorrow than they are today, and know that we're all in this boat together. So with that, I'm going to close, and again, I'll turn it over to our friends in the press and see if you all have any questions of me. But again, if you have questions of my colleagues gathered here this morning, and I saw Marcus Lingenfelter, who is, where'd you go, Marcus? It's hard to miss him. Marcus, welcome. I turn your attention to Marcus because he is the chair of our trustee group here in the state, and one of the coordinators of this conference, so I was hoping you'd get to join us. Marcus, thank you for coming on board. And again, I only place on this the caveat that certain questions we will not have the time to be able to dig too deeply into today, or may just not have the ability to dig too deeply in them today, because more to come. So with that, questions? Anybody in the room? Let's start
I'm
around.
Mary Niederberger from the Post-Gazette in Pittsburgh. And two things that you actually mentioned, the declining enrollment and declining revenues as well. And in Pennsylvania, I think we have pretty well documented this decline in graduation rates that's expected to last through 2020, high school graduation rates. So that's an obstacle. And the other one is the state system is living with an appropriation that's 18% smaller than it was just a few years ago. And we have a state administration that doesn't seem inclined to increase education funds. So those are two big, tough things. Do you have any specific plans at this point in time for dealing with those
Let me give you
issues?
some ideas. First, on declining enrollment. The one thing that the people around this table don't control is how many people live in the Commonwealth. And this K-12 system is facing what others are in many other states around the country, which are declining enrollments generally. It's not even a question of declining graduation rates. It is a flat question of just less students than they used to have. The bubble appears to be coming up in some out years. Nobody can exactly determine when that will be, and that's the good news, is the numbers appear to be coming back up downstream. But right now we're dealing with what we're dealing with. I'm not quite sure, though, that it doesn't alleviate you of the responsibility as a system and an institution to then thus better organize around the students you do have, number one. You can't operate a system of 5,000 students the same way you operate a school of 10,000 students. So you can't simply say we're going to continue to do everything we did when we were at 10,000, even though today we're sitting here at 6,000, making those numbers up, point of emphasis. So you've got to first look at how you're organized as an institution around the students that you have and what you project to have over the years to come. Now, as you've seen already, that means, in some cases, some very difficult decisions. You can't do everything you've always done when you're looking at significantly less students. And you've got to organize for what you have and organize for what you're going to have going forward. Two, I also don't think you need to simply surrender to declining enrollment. And here's what I mean by that. One of the things that I'm desperate to look at in Pennsylvania is the relationship that exists between our community colleges and our universities. Unless I'm proven wrong, I believe there's great potential there to create an even more seamless system of transfer for community college students who graduate with an associate degree to chase their baccalaureate degree on to one of our 14 universities. We have to make sure that that is not only marketed, but that what's marketed is an easy, seamless system of transfer that will take into consideration the work that they did at the community college to assure that when they move to a university, they can as quickly and effortlessly and seamlessly move into their baccalaureate degree seeking years in a cost-effective way with the greatest return on investment